All right, welcome to week 3 of the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That is Baylin Trujillo. This episode is brought to you by Influencer Council, all things NIL, education through implementation, also Big Hits Live. Nobody does graphics across Central Florida better than Big Hits. Baylin, week 2, outstanding games. Let's talk a little bit about what we saw.
Yeah, no, I was really impressed with week 2 performances. Also kind of shocked with a couple of them as well. I think we found out really who Coco is. He brings a lot of attitude towards the program, but I think, Coco really stood in there. Brady Hart had a phenomenal game and lit it up. And so, we're going to talk about that more in depth later on, but I think that was a good one. I think the question marks around Dr. Phillips' offense, I was really expecting to see bigger numbers when they played Timber Creek this week, when they put up 60 against Lake Mary. Now it was a 17-7 football game. I know it's sloppy. Edgewater really impressed me this week. A big win over another West Coast team, CAI. That was pretty impressive. They had 10 Division I commits on that defense, and sure enough, Edgewater comes away with the victory there. Osceola still trying to find its win, just like Jones. Jones went up to Maryland, got spanked to a nationally ranked program, not just the state ranked, but a nationally ranked program. So yes, I know the score looked a little lopsided. I talked to Elijah Williams, but that game was a lot closer than what the score looked like, and he's pretty proud about their efforts going up to Maryland and doing that and time framing and all that. So that was pretty big. Seminole is exactly who we think they are. They're just like, at the top, just like Mainland. DeLand put on a show, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Lake Mary Winter Park this week. They both had, one had a bye week, the other one had a cancellation game because of the hurricane. And again, so glad that everybody's safe through that in Central Florida, also on the West Coast and all across the state. I'm glad that we made it through that, and hopefully we don't have anything like that coming up. But yeah, week 2 was a big week. Another surprise, again, an upset with the Ocoee over Wekiva. Again, another thing that we're going to talk about. But, man, a lot of great football, Dan.
Yeah, no doubt. And we got a big surprise. We got John Santucci from the USA Today joining us here in a minute. So let's go to a quick break, and we're going to bring John on. You're watching Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That's Baylin Trujillo. And joining us is John Santucci from the USA Today. John, welcome to the Central Florida Scoreboard Show.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, so let's talk about week 2, and we're going to stop with our private top 5 Baylin. All Galley takes care of Bishop Moore 12-10.
Yeah, that was a great game. That was one of the games that we really wanted to see both programs elevate themselves. We were trying to figure out who Bishop Moore was, they're coming off the loss to Edgewater. Let's see how they respond. And Ugali, everybody keeps talking about them on the East Coast, and they got a couple transfers in to see where they stand, and they did come away with the 12-10 win. They were pretty much dominating that football game. Bishop Moore had a late touchdown there, but overall, I think Ugali did really well. I just still don't think it's enough to put them in our rankings this week, as we talked as a committee. But at the end of the day, they did show that they are one of the better teams on the East Coast, and they beat a really solid Bishop Moore team. But man, Bishop Moore still trying to find out their first win.
And Holy Trinity falls to Bayside 35-26.
Actually, Holy Trinity destroyed Bayside, spanked them.
All right, number 3, Foundation Academy puts it on Cocoa Beach 57-0. Michael Dove with a big game in that game.
Yeah, he's special talent. Michael Dove, I can't say nothing more positive about him. I mean, he's thrown and scored 10 touchdowns, accounted for 10 touchdowns in 2 weeks, 2 blowouts, 2 games where he's been sat at halftime. Look for Foundation to make a big statement this week against Toho. I know that's going to be a game we cover later, but this is going to be a first. I think their real test. I mean, they completely shredded the team this week, Bayside, and then week 1 they won 68-8 against Tenorock. So, at the end of the day, they're rolling behind Michael Dove, and Foundation has something special over there.
All right, Central Hills Christian takes the train down to Oviedo, Florida, and Masters Academy welcomes them 62-35.
Nazir's the quarterback over there, a 2026 kid, a kid I train. He lit it up, 6 touchdown passes in that football game. It was a close game until the fourth quarter, and they really opened it up. And, man, I'll tell you what, Coach Kruzek, I talked to him on the phone this week, and he's really excited. Finally got that first win under his belt as a head coach, and look for him to keep rolling offensively. I was kind of shocked last week against the Tennessee team, which was a pretty good team after doing a little bit of research. But, finally they're back where they should be offensively. And I know they were clicking. And again, their quarterback threw 6 touchdowns in that football game. Look for him to keep building on that momentum as they keep going throughout the year against some of these local private schools, and watch Masters be a team to look out for.
And private number 5, Orlando Christian Prep takes care of Liberty. D. Hart takes over that program over in Kissimmee area, 52-6.
Cameron Curzon, the Boone transfer quarterback, threw 2 touchdowns, also had a rushing touchdown in that football game. Look for OCP to keep making noise. They're always a local powerhouse here in the private school ranks, but man, they are dominating offensively. They're usually known for their defense, right? Because they're used to their triple option, the wing T offense, right? But now they're going to a more spread type look. They do some stuff under center, but they're in gun a little bit more, and they're finally putting up some big points. So look for OCP to get like future tests, I think, in these local area schools. But right now they are rolling.
All right, we get into the public schools. John, we brought Oviedo into the top 10 last week at number 10, but they fall to OC University 37-21.
I've had a lot of people tell me University is a team to watch out for. A couple people were banging the drum in the USA Today poll, and I believe they're right on the cusp of being ranked in our top 10 in 3M. Does that sound right? 3M or 4M, I can't remember. But no, it's a really nice win for University for sure.
All right, we move on. Number 9, Winter Park, was going to go to Brunswick, Georgia, but that got canceled due to the storm. So we're going to move on past that, where number 8, Wekiva, falls to Ocoee 13-6, Baylin.
Yeah, this was amazing. I feel so good for Ocoee's football team. Again, after deflating loss on a safety with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left against Apopka, team, again, they've just every year, 1 or 2 points, lose to that powerhouse. It's just that's how their season always starts, so close and depleting. And then here they come the next week and beat a solid Wekiva team who was rolling offensively behind Tyree Davis. So the fact that they held them to 6 points shows me that not only is Ocoee the real deal, but their defense might be easily one of the top in this area, especially holding Apopka to 0 offensive points. And then now literally holding Wekiva just to 6. So this is going to be a team, I think, by week 4, week 5, they might even crack our top 10 if they keep doing performances like this. They have something special going over there, and I'm really excited to see what this new head coach is doing with the program that was in the Final Four last year, Dan.
I'll tell you what, and John, Ocoee has a young player, Michael McClinton, 2 weeks in a row has 20 tackles per game. Yeah,
Ocoee's defense is really good. They've given up 6 points total in 8 quarters. So, and personally, to me, part of this is I really like Wekiva. I really like Tyree Davis. He's a guy I've been banging the drum on for the last 6 months, saying he's one of the more under-recruited players, kind of in the state, not just Central Florida. So the fact that they were able to hold them to 6, I think is really impressive. They've got a lot of nice young players on that defense, though. I remember Shep last year was saying, hey, our 2025 class is going to be really special. We're already seeing that evidenced out in these first 2 weeks. That losing to Apopka by 2, either in soccer or football, is not really anything to be ashamed about. So, I think Ocoee is definitely on the right track.
All right. Number 7, Apopka, takes care of business against one of their oldest rivals in West Orange, 14-7, Baylin.
Yeah, this has gone back and forth the last 3 or 4 years. Usually the home team comes away with the victory in this one. As we saw last year, West Orange win. This year, Apopka's at home, they win. Even 3 years before that, Apopka's at home, they win. And then 4 years before that, West Orange won at home. So they've continued that streak back and forth. I was very surprised that, one, Apopka scored more than 0 points this week, so they got 14. But then I was also surprised that West Orange didn't score more than 7 this week. So, again, Apopka, we know what they bring defensively. They are, just like Ocoee, one of the top defenses, if not the top defense in Central Florida every single year. Not just this year or last year. It's every single year, which is why they find themselves in the state title game at the end of the season. But West Orange is known for their offense. And I thought with the way they just completely dismantled Oak Ridge, I thought they were going to have some momentum going into this football game. Again, a team that struggled against Ocoee, right? And they won the game. Tyson Davison played on a bad ankle for 90% of this football game. Still went in there, threw a touchdown, led another touchdown drive. So they come away with that 14-7 victory. They were actually up 14-0 at one point. And I think this is starting to see the trend of Apopka starting to, figure themselves offensively, and then hopefully again later down the season really showcase why they're easily one of the best area teams. But this was again a shocking for both ends, the score-wise. But again, Apopka wins this matchup.
John, you got to give credit to head coach Jeff Rolson sticking with the spread offense early in the year.
Okay, I give him credit. No, look, I think he's one of the best coaches in the state. I've said this all along. It's amazing getting to cover the whole state. When I go down to South Florida, the reverence and respect that they talk about Apopka with is, you have to win over those guys because they don't believe that anybody is better than anything in South Florida. And so, look at what happened last year with Apopka. I think with the exception of Cave and Call, when you're looking at the state championship game against Columbus, I think you could make the argument that Columbus had the advantage man for man at, 21 out of 22 starting spots on offense or defense, and Apopka should have won that game. So I think Rolson's always going to find a way to keep his team in the game if they are outmanned. I don't know that this was the case against West Orange. I just think these are two good teams that are going to be around at the end of the season in 4M. And, quite frankly, this is what I went to Apopka West Orange 2 years ago. It looked exactly like this, just with different players. So this is basically what I would expect. But yes, I will give him credit because you demanded it of your alma mater.
Exactly. Forever blue. All right. Edgewater hosts Clearwater Clearwater Academy International and comes away with that win 15-14, Bay.
Yeah, they were down 15-0 at halftime. Edgewater seemed to have their way in the first half. Michael Clayton, I said this before the show last week and even before the game, that this was Michael Clayton's breakout game. They've kind of played it safe with him the last couple of weeks, even in the Kickoff Classic and in week one. They're not really showcasing his ability to throw the ball downfield, and he did that and looked really nice in the first half. And they were clicking on all cylinders. Actually, the score was a lot closer than what the game should have been. There were some turnovers that Edgewater had that they could have really made it worse. But then guess what? The entire tables turned the second half. CAI, who, again, I mentioned earlier in the show, is loaded with Division I talent. They play a national schedule. They were up 21-0 in the first quarter last week against Columbus, ended up losing that game 28-21. And then they had Homestead on the ropes in week one, a team that went to the state title game last year. So they don't shy away from any competition. And Edgewater was the only Central Florida team that would put them on their schedule. And they came back and behind a freshman quarterback, Joe Quinn. He came back, led them through a couple touchdowns, and they went for 2 points to win the game. They went for a 2-point conversion, ended up not getting it because they had a false start penalty right before the play. And then they, going from the 10-yard line or the 8-yard line from a 2-point conversion is pretty tough, especially against Edgewater. And unfortunately didn't get it. They did get the onside kick though, but it was way too much Eagles defense, and they stopped them. But man, what a good game. I wish I was there. This was our game of the week, obviously due to weather. None of us showed up to this football game, so it kind of stinks because this would have been one of the games we remember for a while, especially having highlights to this game. But, man, Michael Clayton definitely showcased his ability to throw the football vertically, and look for Edgewater to start to build up momentum. This is a big quality win here.
Hey, John, I said this beginning of the season. I felt like Edgewater was one of the most well-rounded programs coming into the season, both offense, defense, and special teams. Clearwater Academy, that's a national team. It's very comparable to IMG, so this is a pretty impressive win.
100%. When you look at the talent that CAI has, I got to see both these teams in the spring. Clearwater's loaded on both lines, and that's usually where you're going to end up losing a game in high school, is if you are getting outmanned on the offensive or defensive line. So the fact that Edgewater was able to hold its own, play really well in the first half, hold on in the second half, and you don't want to have to hold on, but there's some value in that going forward, especially when you win. So, I feel like there's a lot for Edgewater to build off because that CAI team is legit.
All right, let's move on. Jones goes up to Maryland and falls to the Lady of Good Counsel, 40-14, Baylin.
Yeah, this is a nationally ranked program. I mean, obviously their name it's funny when you say it like that. You're like, did we just lose to a team like that? But if you do your research on this team, they were on ESPN in week one, and they had a short week, and they are loaded with talent. Yes, they lost 28-7 in their first game, but that was also to a nationally ranked program as well, which is why they found themselves on ESPN. So Jones decides to go up there. I'm thinking with their speed, their talent, their coaching, I think this was going to be a better game. Jones actually went up 7-0 on the first drive. Darion Coleman got the start, the sophomore quarterback. Got the start, had a 17-yard rushing touchdown to open up the game, and then it went back and forth. There was a kickoff return back for a touchdown that tied it, and then Jones went right back down and scored. Again, another punt return for a touchdown. So special teams was the name in this game for the team from Maryland. I won't call them by their name, but the team from Maryland. And they scored 21 points off kickoff returns and punt returns. So that was pretty much the difference in this football game. It was 20-14 going into halftime. Jones, obviously was right in the thick of it, but I just think, again, when you don't have the opening kickoff of the second half went back for another touchdown. So you do that, you eliminate special teams errors. This game could have been a lot closer. Obviously, when you go down big early and you're depleted, knowing that it's because of your mistakes, it's really hard to come back, especially when your score is 20-14, and then within the next 4 minutes of the second half, it's now, 35-14. Like, it's just depleting. So give credit to Jones. Again, they're not scared of anybody. Everybody wonders why, they're still ranked, and which we'll get into that a little later, 0-2. But guess what? They lost to Cocoa and they lost to this team. These are two nationally ranked programs. There's no reason why they're still not a top team in Central Florida. They still have some of the best talent. They were our number one team coming in. So Jones is still looking for their first win, obviously 0-2, but they are still a nationally ranked and recognized program, and look for them to make a big statement this week.
John, we've been here before. We've seen strong programs build strong schedules at the beginning of the year. Yeah. And this ends up being a great advantage to them down the stretch, doesn't it?
Yeah, my takeaway is who cares? And I obviously you want to win. You want to win every single game. That's why you play the games. But they went to Texas last year, didn't go well. And then I think they only lost one game until the Final Four, which was the 1-point game against Edgewater last year. They went on a big run after playing a really, really good team in Texas. I feel like they're poised to do the exact same thing. And I really feel like either them or Osceola is going to have a win after the end of this week. I don't know why. I just feel that way. But no, I love the schedule. I love the fact that Elijah is always giving his teams really hard looks early on. They play Cocoa. That's not a bad loss. Cocoa is really, really good, and they only lost by 2. The score doesn't look good in this one, but what you gain out of it is you're getting prepared for what you want to get prepared for, which is Edgewater, which is Homestead, which is Tampa Bay Tech, which is Aquinas. That's where Jones is thinking. They're thinking about how do we win the district? How do we get to the Final Four? How do we get to a state championship game? So these are the kind of teams you have to play. This will help them later on.
All right, that leads us into a really big game, not only here in Central Florida, but across the state. Venice goes into Cocoa. Cocoa takes care of business, 31-21, Baylin.
Yeah, Brady Hart, I just mentioned it. He lit it up. He obviously had help at the receiver position, but he grew up this game. I know I covered the game last week when they played Jones, and he had a pretty I wouldn't say bad day, but it just wasn't great. He threw a couple of interceptions, threw the touchdown, but now this was the game where he showcased, okay, this is why you're one of the top 26 quarterbacks in the entire state, if not one of the top in the country. And me and John had a really good conversation yesterday about him because he covered this game, which he's going to speak on it. But I'll tell you what, man, he was impressed by Brady being there live. So, this was a great Venice team, a Venice team that a lot of people are feared for in the West Coast. And, they got popped in week 1 against Armwood. So I knew they would probably come with a little bit more fire going into the Cocoa game. And then Cocoa definitely lit that thing out pretty quickly. And it wasn't due to rain. It was because of their performance on the field. So I'm really excited about where they're headed, Cocoa. And they talk about momentum. You need every momentum you can get going into St. Thomas Aquinas. So they got their 2-0 start. They could have easily been 0-2 right now or 1-1, but they won their games, and they're looking forward to a big matchup this week against arguably one of the best teams in this entire state, and that's not just the state, it's nationally. But, John, I would love to know your thoughts on this because you actually covered this game.
Yeah, I thought Cocoa played exceptionally well. They never trailed in the game. You lead Venice wire to wire, you're doing a lot right. Brady Hart, like you said, 408 yards. I want to say 26 of 33. Even the incompletions, they were not bad passes. And I talked to both of you guys yesterday. The thing I love about Brady Hart, he's not trying to complete passes. He's trying to complete a pass so that and give his receiver the ability to get yards after the catch. There was a very nice ball. But he's making high percentage throws, high percentage reads, and he's putting it where his receiver can catch it, turn, get upfield, do something with it. All 3 of Javon Boggs' touchdowns were run after the catch. One, he broke tackles on all 3. So Just really nice play, but Brady Hart led the way. And the thing that I liked, Brady did not play well against Jones. You were a little more kind than I was, Baylin. He did not have a good game against Jones. And if you're a coaching staff, you can respond to that by saying we need to take more off his plate. Maybe we're going to run the ball more. Maybe it's all screen passes early on just to give him some confidence. That certainly was not the case against Venice. They were putting everything on Brady Hart's shoulders. And the drive that really stood out to me was the first drive of the second half. Venice just scored before the break to make it 10-7. They've got a little momentum. Coco gets the ball, and they go pass, run, pass, touchdown. So, and every single play was started with Brady Hart. 3 of 4 on the drive. I think it was 86-yard drive, and he had about 15-yard run, 18-yard run, somewhere in there on a design draw. When you're saying we're going to put everything on your shoulders, I love that the coaching staff has that kind of confidence in him, and I love that he rewarded them with such an amazing game. That's one of the best games you're going to see, and that would be the same if we were talking about Venice or we were talking about a team that, some independent that's just, having its first year of football. 26 of 33 for 408 and 4 touchdowns. That's amazing. And when you do it against a team with multiple Power 5 defensive backs,
yeah,
I don't know what else to say. It was stunning in how efficient it was. And I think they actually have a chance against Aquinas. I don't think this is one of those. Last year, I felt like, hey, this is a good game to get experience because you're going to want to play good teams going into the playoffs, like we said with Jones. I feel like Coco can actually hang with Aquinas this year.
Wow.
All right, that moves us right in. Seminole hosts Osceola. Seminole comes away 31-6, Baylin.
Yeah, I cannot wait for Swint to get back in the mix here. This is not – I mean, I do think that Osceola is down. I called it from week 1, even in the preseason. Even with Swint in the lineup, I don't think this is the same Osceola team we're used to seeing, obviously, because they're young. They lost every secondary to Division I. They lost pretty much all their skill players to Division I last year. Last year was the best team I think they've assembled in a long, long time, and they're all gone. So now you're looking at freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, guys with less experience trying to take over a massive powerhouse program in Osceola County. But here's the thing. I think that Seminole – it could have been worse. I honestly think that. I think Seminole is exactly who we think they are. This is obviously a pretty big margin of victory, but it stinks because everybody thinks, oh yeah, it's Osceola. Guys, this is not the same Osceola team. They're gonna have some hard, some stuff to work through. But I think when Swint comes back, obviously they're going to be a much better football team. I still don't think the result would have changed. It just would have been a lot closer because the kid's that dynamic. He's going to give you 2 to 3 touchdowns a night. So with that being said, Seminole is very impressive. I still think this is a quality win. It's just when it comes to when you look at teams like Coco beating Venice or stuff like that, that's where you kind of get in those conversations. Where does Seminole really stack up? They are definitely one of the top teams in Central Florida. That's not even a question. It's just now when you talk about rankings and talk about strength of schedule, stuff like that. Let's not look at the names. Let's look at reality and what's really happening. And this is a solid win for Seminole, but I'm really excited when they play Coco in a couple weeks.
John, Carl Calhoun comes in as a first-year head coach, graduate of Seminole. It doesn't seem that the team has really skipped a beat since he's taken the helm from Eric Lodge.
Yeah, look, I like Calhoun a lot. Obviously, I like when you have a qualified candidate in-house. I think that's a good way to go, especially when you've had success. This is just a side note, I don't understand teams that are losing and they bring in a guy who is on that staff because I think that just perpetuates the problem most often. But Calhoun, really good coach, really smart guy, understands what he wants to do. I was there in the spring. I saw him in the spring game. I'm going to see him here against the Apopka in a couple weeks. But I like what he's doing. I would add this, though. I don't think we have a great read on Seminole yet because I don't feel like we have a great read on any of their opponents other than Edgewater in the Kickoff Classic. I don't feel like we really understand Rockledge right now because Rockledge had more turnover, I think, than I even realized. And I saw them in the Kickoff Classic. They're just not where they were a year ago. I feel like Osceola, John Walker's to me, he's a generational type talent, and he covers up a lot of holes. Not that they had a lot, but he covers up a lot. And so I felt like last year their defense was elite. They were bound to take a step back. They've already had injuries this year. I don't have a good read on Rockledge. I don't have a good read on Osceola. Treasure Coast, we're going to find out some things on Friday. Treasure Coast just scored 67 points against Jesuit.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to do that to Seminole, but I think we're going to get a better read on the kind of team Seminole is. And I know that Treasure Coast, that's a very specific offense. But, the Seminole, I think we have number 3 in 4M, and Treasure Coast, we have number 3 in 4S. So I think these are 2 really good teams. I think it's going to be an incredibly physical game, but I think we'll have a better read on Seminole coming out of this one than we have the previous 2 games.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Treasure Coast running that single wing offense really lays the foundation that Seminole cannot make a lot of mistakes in this game Friday night. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that comes out. All right,
this is real quick. This is a good game for Seminole because it even, I don't care what Apopka is running, it still helps you get another live action look at what Apopka is going to do. So, or wants to do, or will mix in, however you want to say that. So I love this game for Seminole.
All right, number 1 Mainland takes care of North Broward, 35-0.
Yeah, I mean, Mainland is the real deal, and there's really not much you can go based off this. So this is another blowout win for them.
And John, Mainland, they've got a test this week too, going up to Bartram Trail.
Yeah, again, 2 of the top-ranked suburban teams in the state of Florida. We've got Mainland at number 1 in 3M. We've got Bartram Trail at number 5, and depending on who you ask and probably the week, because right now 4S is just insane and it's a lot of fun because I feel like we have turnover every week in the top few spots. Bartram Trail could certainly be ranked higher just depending on, flip a coin. So, I love this matchup of Mainland's D-line against Riley Trujillo and Lathan Biddle. I feel like that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Anytime it's LJ McCray, just get your popcorn and enjoy it. So, I feel like this is a good test for both teams. And here's my thing, and I think, Dan, you and I were talking yesterday, as long as it's a fairly close game, I honestly don't have a strong opinion on this team, this happened in the outcome. I'm not worried about the outcome. I'm worried about, can these teams play each other well? If one team blows out the other, I think it says a lot. If they play each other well, I think it's just good competition.
Oh, I don't disagree. Considering the first 3 to 4 weeks, you're kind of setting up your season. District play really gets started in week
Correct.
4, and it's going to be very interesting.
Well, and real quick, to go back to Jones and Edgewater, everything is about getting ready for that first game. Jones and Edgewater is that first district game. I think you feel pretty comfortable in saying that the winner is going to, kind of run out and have a very sizable advantage to winning the district championship. Everything is about getting ready for week 4, week 5, week 6, week 8, right? So, Mainland and Bartram, and especially for Bartram, because they're in a ridiculously difficult district with Creekside, with Buchholz. That's a really, really good district they're in. So, again, good competition for both teams. But early on, I'm looking just to see a good game. I'm not really trying to take too much away because I feel like early on that could be disingenuous almost.
Take a quick break. When we come back, we got our Dudes of the Week, and John's going to stay with us. You're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show, and we'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That is Baylin Trujillo and John Santucci from the USA Today. Let's get right into our Dudes of the Week. And we'll start with our offensive Dude of the Week, Javon Boggs, the junior wide receiver out of Cocoa. 10 catches, 218 yards, and 3 touchdowns. John, you were there to witness this firsthand.
Yeah, you just saw me. If you look really hard and know what you're looking for, I was on the other sideline. This play right here is one of the best plays I think I've seen in a long time. Watch the move he makes right there. That's beautiful. Over 200 yards receiving, like you guys said, 10 catches, 3 touchdowns, all in the second half, including the one that put the game away with about 2.5 minutes remaining. He's outstanding. There's a reason why he's got Ohio State offers and some others. I don't know why I said Ohio State offers plural. They only offer you once. They think that's good enough. But he's a phenomenal player. He's the complete package. I can't say enough good things about him. He was open a lot. And when you've got Charles Lester on the other side of the ball, that says a lot about you. In fact, I didn't think Lester played like a terrible game or anything. I think Boggs is just that good. And so, I called a couple people on very late Friday night, very early Saturday morning. And I said, look, take Javon Boggs and take Javian Hilson, divide up 9 stars however you want to. That's the kind of players we're looking at from Coco. So I think he's phenomenal. I love that he's finally getting the respect statewide that he deserves.
Baylin, I look at this kid, and the term that comes to mind watching him with the ball is playmaker.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, it helps Brady Hart. You got a guy like that you can throw to. It makes his job a lot easier. And of course, he's making the throws out there. But I was at the University of Miami actually this weekend just to visit some family. And I actually had a little private tour for my son, who's 14 months, which is hilarious. But I did talk to their coaches, and I told them, I said, look, this guy just did this against one of the best corners in the country, and he scored 3 touchdowns. I have no idea why a program like the University of Miami, who's known for having speed and athleticism at the receiver position, and they have not offered this kid. I said, you guys got to do your homework. I told the coach, the recruiting coordinator, this. You got to do your homework on this kid. This kid is the real deal. Why he has the Ohio State offers, the Penn State, the Michigans, he's got every offer pretty much in the Big Ten. And I'm still wondering why the University of Miami, who's straight right down I-95, hasn't offered this kid. They need to pull the trigger. This kid's like John just said, he could be a 5-star, 4-star, whatever you want to divide it or whatever. They both could be 5 stars. I don't care. This kid just put this type of performance against a team like Venice, against one of the best corners in the entire country. And like he said, it's not that Lester wasn't in a good position every time. He just Javion is just that much talented. That's how good he is. And he made it look easy. So, they need to start doing some homework. All the programs. This guy's going to be playing major Power 5. He has the type of ability, from what I've seen, to potentially start as a true freshman at a college program. So, or at least push for it. So he's ready. He's that type of guy. So I'm excited for him, and that's why he's our dude of the week.
All right, let's get our defensive dude of the week. And this is a performance that's but at the end of the day, this kid is a sophomore, 20 tackles and 7 sacks this week from Michael McClinton, Baylin.
That's insane. This kid, I remember watching him at Lake Mary. And of course, his dad's the defensive coordinator at Ocoee, and that's probably why he's there. But this kid is unfreaking believable. He is freakish, unfreaking believable because he's a freak. 20 tackles in 2 straight weeks. You don't hear things like that. There was a play. I wish we could bring this up. Obviously, we can't. But he was at DeLand in the spring game. Of course, I watched the spring game, and he literally took the ball off a reverse. I'll never forget it. He literally took the ball from a double reverse and could have scored. Like, it was the craziest, freakish play I've ever seen. And I didn't even know this kid was at Ocoee until this week when we talked about him. And I'm like, wait, I recognize that name. Did some research. I'm like, that's the same kid I saw in the spring game. This kid is a Power 5 type of defensive end. We're going to be talking about this guy for a very long time. I believe he's a sophomore, 2026 class. This kid is the real deal, and it just shows you in these clips, 20 tackles. He has a whole season highlight in the last 2 games, and we're just getting started. So I'm excited about this guy. I don't know about you, John. I know Dan's excited about this guy. What's your thoughts on this, John?
Where was he at? Was he at Lake Mary last year?
Yeah, Lake Mary.
Started as a true freshman, right? Oh, true freshman. I don't know why I even started in high school. Listen, there is a guy that I remember talking to the coaching staff in the spring, and they were really high on him, liked his potential. I think he's still – I think most colleges are going to want to see him grow an inch or two or see if he can do that. But he's a high motor kid. He's ridiculously productive. And the thing I like about him is, take your chance if you want to try to run at him, but it's not going to go well. He's a guy who can set the edge. He's a guy who can come off the edge. He probably plays linebacker at the next level. There's a lot to like about his game. And obviously, he's got, I like coaches' kids too, because they know what they're doing. They're a little more subtle sometimes in understanding, and maybe a little more nuanced might be a better word, in understanding different things and reading different things. This is exactly what, I don't know if you expect 7 sacks ever, but having a strong game being an impact player, even at the 4M level. I absolutely think he's capable of that week in, week out.
No doubt about it. And again, we got a guy on the other side of the ball that we've talked about last few years of Sincere Edwards. But, this is a kid that we're going to be talking about, like Baylin said, for the next couple of years. He might be that next great talent out of Central Florida. We'll be talking about well into Saturdays and Sundays.
There's a lot of really good defensive linemen in Central Florida right now this year. When you're talking about L.J. McCray, Javion Hilson, McClinton, you've got Alexander Felton at Edgewater. You got the Cruel kid at Bishop Moore. There's a lot of talent in that, and I love Sincere Edwards. He's, in our top 50 in the state. So there's a lot of really good D-line talent. I love being able to see guys make plays on the other side of the other side of the line of scrimmage. So he's a fun one to watch for sure.
All right, now we got our special teams due to the game, and it's Javon Ross, the senior athlete out of DeLand, had a 93-yard kickoff return, but he did so much more. Great film, and he did this also last week or 2 weeks ago against Mainland, Baylin.
Yeah, no, Javon Ross is someone you're very high on, Dan. You talked about him to me several times in the last couple of weeks, and DeLand is just one of those programs where I do believe they're one of the easier top programs in Central Florida. Obviously, they have the loss to Mainland, who is our number one team. So they put a rout this week, and I'm very excited to see the trajectory of them. But special teams, Darlington's always been high on special teams, and it's showing you what they can do. And you got a talent like that back there returning kicks. I mean, he's going to have at least an opportunity to return several kicks each and every week, especially with their schedule. So I'm excited about that. And Javon Ross is our dude of the week this week.
All right, guys, that is it. We come back. We got the new top 10 with Baylin and I. You're watching Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show, and we'll be back.
Can I say one last thing real quick? First of all, I won't be back, so you don't have to click out of your browser because I felt bad that Dan actually teased that last time. But I love DeLand. I think that DeLand is a team, when you start, they're going to be around late November. I honestly think that in 4S, in that region with Osceola, Vero Beach, Treasure Coast, DeLand. I think that's kind of the pecking order in the top four there. I fully expect DeLand to be around second, third round for sure. I don't think enough people are talking about how talented this team is. Obviously, we know they're incredibly well coached, but I love Ross. I really do think this team will be around late into the postseason.
All right. I appreciate John Santucci from the USA Today joining us today. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the new top 10. Welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That's Baylin Trujillo. It's always great to have John Santucci with us, isn't it?
Yeah, I like him, man. And like I said, he called me yesterday. We've talked several times throughout the weeks, and he's very updated on what he's doing, but he takes value in quarterbacks. So when you have a guy that likes quarterbacks, you're my type of guy, just like you, Dan. So we can talk all day for sure.
All right, let's talk about this new top 10. Mainland stays at number 1. Cocoa moves up one spot with a big win over Venice.
Yeah, and number 3 comes in Seminole, and number 4 is Edgewater with their big win over CAI.
Lake Mary had a bye week, but they move up one spot to 5. Apopka moves up to 6. Jones drops down to number 7, Baylin, followed by Winter Park. And then we welcome Heritage out of Palm Bay and also Leesburg at number 10.
Yeah, so again, we just talked about earlier in the segment about Jones being 0-2 and people questioning why are they still ranked 0-2. Guys, any one of these top 10 programs plays the team they did in Maryland, they're probably coming with an L. Any one of these top 10 teams wants to play Cocoa week 1, they probably come away with an L. So just because Jones is 0-2, you got to look at the big picture. Everybody's so stuck on the record. Look at the quality of opponents, which is why us as a committee have vocalized that on social media. Like, rankings are based off quality wins and quality losses. Does not mean Jones is not a top program in Central Florida. You put them against anybody in our top 10, that's a great game. Again, they lost to Cocoa by 2, again, which they could have won. right? So you play them against Seminole, Apopka, Winter Park, Heritage, Leesburg. You can't tell me, honestly, look me in the face and say Jones can't come away with a victory in those matchups. There's obviously other programs that will almost guarantee lose, but Jones is still a top team, which is why we had them ranked number 1 going into the season. Obviously, Cocoa had the upset win, and now they're climbing the ladder. And then obviously they lost to Maryland, a nationally ranked program, top 25 in the entire country. So, when it comes to the rankings, guys, don't look at the records. We look at the quality wins and losses, and this is why we move them around. It's such a great thing that we do, and I love that, people chime in. That's why we do this show. That's why we get everybody involved. Leesburg cracks the top 10. Who would have thought preseason we didn't even talk about them? But, again, if you watch their last 2 games, they're not only blowing teams out, they're putting them away. That's how you impress us. It's not, again, obviously you play weaker, less opponents, but when you are the superior team, just like the Florida Gators were at one point, just like the Florida Seminoles are now, just like Miami was in the 90s, right? When you are playing those type of teams, you should put them away. It should be ugly losses, your 50s, your 60s, and nothings. That's what Leesburg's done, which is showing impressive. And guess what? They beat a Eustis team, which is 2-0, and they play a great team in Mount Dora, who's also 2-0 this week. So if they keep rolling over teams like that, obviously they're going to get attention. So I'm glad they're in there. Heritage is another program. Yes, their schedule might be weaker, but they're putting teams away. They have not given up a point in 2 games yet here, Dan, and their quarterback play has been phenomenal. So, again, if you want to impress us, keep winning. Obviously, we're going to have communications. Venice was a big win for Cocoa, which is why they jumped Seminole. I think that's much more impressive. Dan, you even talked about it. Much more impressive than a win over Osceola, who's depleted, who's young, doesn't have their star player right now. So that's more impressive. But guess what, Dan? A lot of these teams will have to play each other, so a lot of these talking will stop. So there's our top 10. Dan, if you want to elaborate on that, but it's pretty much evident on why these teams are where they are.
And the thing is there's a number of teams that can work their way in here. I think that the Land will eventually move their way in. Oviedo now has 1 loss. They got a big game against Lake Berry this week. There's a lot of great programs. I think Boone right now. Evans right now is 2-0. I think there's a lot of great conversation. Guys, this is fun. But we do have to own something here, Baylin. Our top 5 on the private schools has to be amended because Holy Trinity lost to Bayside last week.
No, you keep saying that, Dan. Holy Trinity won last week. You've said that twice now. Holy Trinity won 36-24, something like that. Their quarterback had 5 touchdowns accounted for last week, Brogan. So Holy Trinity is the real deal. And again, you got to watch them to know that. But Holy Trinity is number 1 for a reason. Their offense is exploding. They've scored almost 100 points in 2 weeks behind the quarterback of Brogan McNabb, who is a 26 quarterback, another kid that I trained in that 26 power class, I would say, for the quarterback position. So had another great game against Bayside, and look for them to keep, maintaining that 1 spot until they lose, Dan.
Well, then let's take a look. We got Holy Trinity at number 1, Foundation at number 2. Melbourne Central Catholic moves into the 3 spot, into the top 5. OCP at 4, and Masters drops to 1-1, or is 1-1 now, drops to number 5. But you still have a First Academy team that has come out really hot, and some other teams too. Bishop Moore drops out of the top 5, but their schedule is going to get going as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and like you said, the TFA, I think that's the one program people, because they were ranked in our top 5 to begin the year. But if you can honestly say, again, and I love discussion, which is why we had this, Dan, but if you match up TFA, who struggled in the Kickoff Classic, who also had to do a comeback win recently, if you tell me, if anybody can tell me, if they match up with Holy Trinity, do they win? Probably not. If they played Foundation, who's literally lighting it up right now, do they win? Probably not. Melbourne Central Catholic, who just got into our top 5, if you watch them, they are special. They just got Coco's best receiver, Day Farmer, from last year over there. You think that they're going to lose to TFA? Probably not. OCP, who is rolling, who has dominated TFA every time they play recent past. If they play, do they win? Probably not. And then to close it off, Masters Academy, who, again, they lost a pretty good team in Tennessee. That could be a pretty decent matchup, but with their offensive explosion last week, I still don't think that TFA can match with them punch for punch. So they're going to have opportunities because they're going to play some of these top 5 teams later down the road to showcase if they are true. But again, they have great talent. TFA has awesome talent, just like all these top 5 programs in our private school have great talent. Bishop Moore has awesome talent, right? But it's not about the kids; it's about the overall team. And whoever was arguing with us about this ranking talked about a specific player, and we don't believe in him. We believe in every player. We want all the players to succeed. But it has nothing to do with that. We look at reality. We look at the teams, which is why they're ranked. It's called a team ranking, not a player ranking. So we want everybody to be successful. TFA, please keep winning. We love talking about you guys. Just these other top 5 programs are proving themselves against competition. And on top of that, look at how they're winning. They are dominating, separating themselves, which is why they're in our top 5.
All right, Baylin. Well, let's get right into week 3, and let's talk about some of the big games to get your predictions. All right, let's start off. We've got Toho going into Foundation, 2 great quarterbacks that are going to light it up this Friday night.
That's exactly what I'm excited about, Dan, which is why they're one of our top 5 to 6 games we're going to talk about this week. The fan polls do have Foundation winning this game at 74%. I am going to go with the fans here. I think Foundation and the way Michael Dove is playing has been incredible. Now, I will tell you on the flip side, Toho is a great quarterback in Sebi Messick, right? He's a special talent, was the number 1 passing quarterback last year in the entire state as a freshman. He's got several Division I offers. Coach Diesel's offense, they will run up the score. But as you have seen recently, Foundation has done the exact same thing, and Michael hasn't even played in a 3rd or 4th quarter this season so far, and it's only been 2 games. Look for them to continue offensively, and I think Foundation beats the public school, Dan.
I tell you what, that's a bold prediction. Let's take a look at Mount Dora, 1-0, going in and playing Leesburg, 2-0. Actually, I believe Mount Dora's 2-0. So 2-0 versus 2-0. Mount Dora going over to Leesburg.
Yeah, Leesburg, they have our fan polls right now. They are up in there, and I'm going to go with the fans here. I think Leesburg dominates Mount Dora. They have now definitely proven themselves. They have spanked both their opponents this year. Both teams were undefeated going into the matchup. Leesburg takes care of business. I love what they're doing. I love what they're doing defensively. They're not giving up any points, Dan. They're rolling over teams. Coach Mitchell has something special going on over there. Obviously, we love their offense. But, man, I'm going to tell you what, Leesburg is now on the map, and they are now in our top 10, and it's going to take them to lose a game like Mount Dora or even later on Lake Mineola to take them out of there. I think they stay for a while, Dan, and I think they win this game fairly easy.
And I tell you, Mount Dora's got a special little quarterback as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see the outcome of this game Friday night. Okay, Apopka, number 6 in the poll, travels to Dr. Phillips. And this is historically a slobber knocker.
Man, when you talk about these 2 programs, this is what we like about high school football, is this type of game. Now, I know Dr. Phillips has been on the lower end of things, recent history, right? Apopka, we're still question mark about their offense, whatever. But guess what? Apopka still finds himself in the state championship game every year. So we're not questioning Apopka. It's where is Dr. Phillips? You go week 1 into a Lake Mary program, and it's a slugfest, 76-60, Dan. Then they come back to a depleted Timber Creek, who lost all their best talent to Winter Park. We're thinking they're going to put on another offensive explosion, and it's 17-7 final score against Timber Creek, who got blown out by Boone in week 1. So where is this Dr. Phillips football team? They need to score in this football game to beat Apopka. That's just point blank, period. And you're not going to beat this team if you can't score. So I am going to go with the fans here. The fans predict Apopka to win this football game. I would love to see a crazy game like last year. No one thought it was going to be a close game. It was 7-6, I believe, the final score. Apopka edges it, scoring late. Dr. Phillips was leading the entire game 6-0, the entire game, and they lose in the 4th quarter 7-6, 1-point victory for Apopka. I think this type of game has that same type of feel. I am going to go with the Apopka Blue Darters in this matchup to win this football game, just like the fans predicted. But I would love to see what Coach Sapp is going to do with Stanley Anderson this week. Can they stay consistent offensively and score to pull off this upset?
And Stanley Anderson's had a great showing the last 2 weeks. All right, let's move on. And we've got Seminole heading down to the Treasure Coast to play the Titans. Right now, the fan polls got it at 75% for Seminole.
Yeah, and this was our biggest voted game this week. I think everybody's really excited about this matchup. Treasure Coast is rolling offensively behind their wing T offense, which no one saw them putting up 67 points on Jesuit, completely routing them by 40, right? So they have a lot of momentum. They beat Osceola week 1, 22-8, continue rolling against Jesuit, who I thought was going to be a pretty good team this year. Obviously, they've fallen to Jones in spanking fashion. Now Treasure Coast has spanked them even worse. They're going into this game, this matchup. You know, Treasure Coast has all the momentum. Seminoles taking care of business against teams that we know they're going to do it. Obviously, they beat Edgewater in the Kickoff Classic, which I think was a more proven victory than the last 2 weeks. This is going to be very interesting, Dan. I am still going to go with the fans. I'm going to go Seminole High School wins this football game. They haven't proven me wrong. They continue to really showcase, and I think Carson, he's playing lights out. I think we're not even talking about the receiver yet. Wait till he has a breakout game. Then they're going to start rolling offensively. David Parks is the X factor in this football game. How is Treasure Coast going to match up with this? I think the trenches is where they separate themselves, and I think that Seminole comes away with this victory, Dan.
I don't disagree with you. I think this is going to be a trenches game. I think it's going to be who is toughest coming out of this. But the most important thing, I look at this game, I think it's a where are we? I think the winner of this game is going to come out confident, but the loser of this game isn't going to lose anything. Treasure Coast last year, Larry Bluestein and I talked about this on our other show, it was the best 5-5 team in the state last year.
Easily.
They played their 5 losses were close against incredible talent. So I think this is going to be one of the most closely watched games in the state of Florida this year or this week.
For sure.
All right, let's move on. The number 2 Cocoa Tigers head down south and take on St. Thomas Aquinas again. Second year in a row, they're going down to Fort Lauderdale.
Brady Hart needs to be the X factor in this football game. If he plays like he did against Venice, I believe they will upset St. Thomas Aquinas on their home turf. But he has to perform like that again, and that's very hard to do against a team like St. Thomas, who we know is like the IMG of what we would call public, private, whatever, separated from independent, right? They can compete for a state title with guys that they can actually recruit and have full scholarships at a tuition-based program like St. Thomas, who's nationally ranked, right? This is a big test for the Tigers. If they win this game, Dan, if Cocoa wins this football game, they're arguably the best team in the entire state of Florida, regardless of classification. I don't care what you say. They beat Venice, they beat Jones, and then they would beat St. Thomas Aquinas. No one can argue that. They would be the number 1 team. I would put them over Central, who's kind of going downwards, over Northwestern, who's struggling. I would put Cocoa right there. I don't care what classification they are, if they somehow upset St. Thomas. This is our first fan poll that has gone to the un-Central Florida team here. 55%, I believe, or 52% has gone the St. Thomas Aquinas way, which is obviously understandable, kind of realistic here. I think St. Thomas Aquinas wins this football game. I am picking them to win. I want to see Cocoa upset them. I want to see Cocoa go in there and beat a team on the road, South Beach, South Miami, and completely whatever I don't even know if they really want to be called Miami. They want to be Upward Broward, whatever you want to call it. I want Cocoa to go down to the coast and get this W, obviously for Brady Hart, for Coach Franco, for Coach Snyder, for Javon Boggs to showcase the Miami Hurricanes that they should offer him, whatever the case may be. But I just think that St. Thomas Aquinas is the real deal, which is why they're favored and which is why I'm picking them. But I want the upset here, Dan.
St. Thomas Aquinas won 7 out of the last 8 state championship games. Has put more players in the NFL than any other program in the state of Florida. But I agree with you. The X factor is Coach Ryan Schneider is the former offensive coordinator for St. Thomas Aquinas. And I think Cocoa has the talent to not only compete, but I agree, can win this game. All right. Our bonus game. This is the game that I've been excited about. This is the game I will be on the sidelines this Friday night. Ocoee 1-1 goes to Evans, who's 2-0.
Yeah,
this is the backyard. This is sneaking across the fence with Ocoee and Evans.
Yeah, this is our game of the week. And Dan, like you just mentioned, you'll be covering this game from the sidelines. I'm excited because Evans is right on the cusp. And so is Ocoee, even at 1-1, to break our top 10. These are 2 phenomenal programs. Evans coming off a great win with Chris at quarterback, beating a Boone team, which I don't remember the last time Evans beat Boone in a matchup. So that was a big victory for that program. They're undefeated 2-0. And then you have Ocoee, whose only loss was 2-0 to Apopka, a perennial powerhouse here in Orlando. And they just beat Wekiva as an upset. This is crazy. This matchup is blowing my mind, the fact that this is a game of the week. This is a game that a lot of people have as game of the week and are paying attention to because of how successful these 2 programs have been the last 2 weeks. Right here, Dan, I'm going to call it right now. Ocoee, to me, is amazing. Defensively wins games and championships, whatever. Evans is showing offensive productivity. Ocoee wins this football game. I think it's dominated defensively. I think they score more than 14 or 13 points this week. I think Ocoee handles Evans, and I think they contain Chris at quarterback. He's only averaging 6 passes a game, which is favorable for Ocoee, who really wants to stop the run. So you have a guy like McClendon, who we just talked about, one of our dude of the week. You got him right there. I just think that Ocoee wins this game, and I think they win soundly, which is going to really bring attention to this program. Like, okay, at 2-1, this team is the real deal.
And I tell you what, 2 new head coaches in Buck Gurley at Ocoee, Carlos Odom at Evans. I think this is going to be an exciting game, probably one of the most exciting games across Central Florida. Well, Baylin, we just got through a whole nother week. We got through a whole nother show. There is so much excitement in Central Florida across the board, from Volusia down to Osceola.
To Lake County, everywhere,
I tell you, we got some games all over the place.
Here's the bonus one we're not going to talk about, but Lake Mary Oviedo, there's a rivalry there. They hate each other. It's right down the street. I'm telling you what, look for Noah Grubbs and Jackson Latour to put on a quarterback show. That's a fun one to watch if you're in Seminole County. I would go there if you're not going to the Seminole game and making travels that way. But I'm telling you, Oviedo Lake Mary is going to be something to watch out for, and look for Noah to light it up again. And I'll be taking him and Brady to the University of Miami this weekend. So I'm very excited about that, as they're taking on officials along with Tyson Davison from Apopka. So the 3 horses at the quarterback position, the 26th class, will be at the University of Miami this weekend. And I'm excited about that. And hopefully all 3 come away with a W this week.
All right. Well, that's going to be it. I'm Dan LaForest. That's Baylin Trujillo. We'll see you next Wednesday at 6 p.m.